Welcome to Ears to Hear. My name is Reed McCrae. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. This is episode number 3, and I'm going to be talking about anger towards God. This is something I'm very passionate about, and it is something that I think many people struggle with. So, have you ever been angry at God? Chances are you have. For one reason or another, we find the need to put blame on someone for something that has happened to us. Now, I think it's important we break down life and the experiences that we go through. I like to see trials that were given in 2 categories. They are either self-inflicted or they are God-given, and those are very different. And sometimes we have a hard time being self-aware to realize that some of our trials are indeed self-inflicted. There are trials for sure that are God-given, meaning no matter what you would have chose, there's a good chance that God allowed this thing to happen to you because he knew you were capable of overcoming it and being better for it. I think that the theme or the analogy of this life being a refiner's fire, if you don't know what that is, think of somebody who refines metals, and they work in metal to create really anything, but often we look at steel, and steel can be hardened and tempered over time to become stronger than it is initially. And this is a process of heating the metal into a great temperature, beating it with a hammer. You'll see those clips of them like with a molten rod, and they're whacking it, they're flattening it, and it's moldable, they're changing its shape, and then they cool it off. They'll like dip it in water and it hardens. And they'll like repeat this process over and over and over again until the finished product is this hardened steel that really can withstand anything. So that's us. The analogy is that God puts us in the refiner's fire, or sometimes we put ourselves in that fire. But God knows through him, through his grace, we can become better than we were before. We can become stronger, better equipped for the next fire, for the next trial that we should go through. And there's this quote by Neil A. Maxwell, and he says that God has been tempering soul steel for eternities, meaning this is God's work. This is what he does. He is the ultimate expert, if you will, and that's an understatement, at tempering our souls as if they were steel and turning us and changing us into the final product that he needs us to be, that we need to be, you name it. And I love that idea. And I like to think that my soul, no matter what excuses I want to make, is no exception to that rule. That God knows my soul, he knows my heart, he knows everything about me. Therefore, he knows the precise trials and challenges that I need to go through. If we think about the earth and its placement, and I'm no scientist, but you've probably heard this before or seen a clip about it, but if the earth were like a degree closer to the sun or further from the sun, we can wrap this up. We are burning or we are freezing. Like we are in such a precise astronomical position in the cosmos as to sustain human life and to be here. And that to me is clearly more than coincidence. It's clearly more than something from nothing and the Big Bang. That doesn't check out. We are the same way. God has placed us in wherever we're at in life, no matter how fair or unfair we think it is, in such a way to interact with certain people, certain events, certain challenges, so that we can ultimately sustain the opportunity to grow and change and become better. Right? It's so easy to look out in the world and think, oh, my life is so unfair. I didn't grow up with a father, or my parents were divorced, or I don't know who my real parents are. I've been adopted. Or, I mean, we can go down that ladder to who has the worst lot in life. We can play that game. And we can play the game of, well, their parent was filthy rich or a celebrity and they've been given everything. Although too often we know how that track plays out. So let's just set that aside for another day, another conversation on like the fairness of life. We're not here to tackle that today. What we are here to tackle is why we as humans, one, want to blame someone, and two, we often turn towards God to do that. And why I have very strong feelings on anger towards God is a direct result of a misunderstanding your relationship with God. I'm going to say that again. Anger towards God is a direct result of misunderstanding your relationship with God. Okay, let me break that down. So here's the deal. We need to, one, understand our true identity. Who are we? This is one of the grand questions of the soul. Who am I? Am I Reed Justice McCrae, or am I someone else? Well, that's my name, but my name could have been John, could have been Jacob, doesn't matter. That's just a title I've been given. And often when we introduce people, oh, my name's Reed, I work in software sales, I'm from California, I like to go to the beach, I like to play soccer. Okay, great. Do you really know anything more about me other than certain preferences that I have? Who am I? Take away the looks, take away my body. Like, who am I? Like, have you ever asked yourself, like, forget looking in the mirror, look inside. Like, what is it that's making you think? What is the part of you that yearns for things, that longs for people or love or for a certain goal or dream or desire? Like, what is that? Right? And that's where we're starting to like chip away at what I'm getting at. We're more than our names, we're more than our bodies, we're more than where we're from, we're more than what we like to do, we're more than what we do for money. So who are we really? Well, let's boil it all down. We are the offspring of God, as quoted in the New Testament. We are God's children. God is our Father who art in heaven. Hallowed be thy name. I tend to take that pretty literal, and whether you choose to take that literal or figurative, either way, there's something beautiful in acknowledging God as a heavenly Father. Somebody who loves you like a son or a daughter, who cares about you, and who would do anything to help you grow and watch you succeed in this life, just as a earthly father would, but times a billion in love and in ability to do so. So, if we understand that God is our loving Father, well, what does that mean day to day? Like, how does that translate? Well, we need to understand that He's completely loving. God's love for us is complete. It is a love for us that no earthly person, no husband, no wife, no son, no daughter, the closest love to it is probably like a mother to a child. You know, you've heard that's like a divine love. I'm not a mother, clearly, and I don't know what that's like to carry a child through pregnancy to childbirth for 9 months, and that pain and that suffering and sickness and challenges and hardships that come with that. But a mother's love to a child truly is divine. Like that's a little bit beyond just like, I love you, bro. Like I'd say to my friends. There's something special about that. It connects earth and heaven, and that is how God loves us truly. There's the scripture about consider the lilies of the field, as Jesus is talking to the people, and he says, consider the lilies, how they toil and spin with the wind. And he goes, even Solomon, who ancient Bezos or Musk or whoever you want to put, in the sense that Solomon had everything. He had all the glory in the world, richest man ever. Even Solomon isn't arrayed in such a way that the lily is. And that's not saying God loves the lilies more than Solomon. He's just pointing out, like, if God, the extreme love that God has for even the most insignificant of things, if God takes the time to create a lily in its beauty, well, imagine how much more he knows your needs, right? And there's scriptures that go to that point of, imagine how much more your Father in heaven knows you and loves you compared to the lilies, compared to the dust of the earth and these things that he does love. So I think it's important we get that straight. Now, there's a disconnect on our experiences in life and our expectations. So we go through life, and we should all have seen by now there are things that do not go as we want them to. Very often, life does not pan out the way we expect. If you know someone, or if you are that person where your life has gone exactly how you thought it would, please comment, please email me, please make a video about that, because I know you don't exist, because no one can say that. And if your life up to this point has gone exactly how you expected, I would guarantee it won't stay that way. I guarantee that shortly something will befall you that you didn't expect. Hopefully not bad. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's good fortune. All I'm saying is we clearly have a lot of things in our life that are outside of our control. Hence the serenity prayer. God, grant me, right, the strength, the serenity, the wisdom to know the difference between what I can control and what I cannot control. A lot of things are outside of our control. I like to think of my 3-foot circle. What is in my 3-foot circle at all times? Usually just me. Sometimes very close friends, family members that I allow to get literally that close to me. My phone is in my 3-foot circle. How much time and energy and attention do I give to that? And that opens the world to other things that I let in my vision, my 3-foot circle. I don't think that's good. So what I'm getting at is that often we have an expectation for how our life is going to go. And when things don't pan out how we'd hope, how we wish, how we planned, there's a disconnect. What went wrong? Often we don't look inward, but I recommend we do. Did I do something that caused this? Was it somebody else? Was it someone close to me? Did they mess this up? Or was it just random or coincidence, if you will? Can't say I believe too strongly in those. And this misalignment is usually what causes us to want to point the finger. And if there isn't somebody close to us that we can attribute blame to, and if it's something that we feel is very important at the time, usually we look back and realize it's not as important as we think, but typically this could be a big life decision. I like to go immediately towards school and a degree and what major you're going to choose. You plan to be a doctor and you get 3 years into your degree and realize this isn't what I want to do. Well, oh no, now I'm stuck. And we have this very narrow-minded, short-sighted perspective. Why would I have the desire to do this, to get to here, and all of a sudden, I don't want to do this anymore? Well, now I have to finish and see this through because I've already put in this much time. What's that called? The sunken ship fallacy? Is that what that's called? Anyway, you get what I'm trying to say. And we like to think, well, God, why would you do that? Like, why would that change in me? And in the moment, we don't know why. Good chances we tend to figure out why that would be looking back. That famous Steve Jobs commencement address he gives where he says you can't always connect the dots looking forwards, but you can always connect them looking backwards. How true that is, how cliche, how true though. How true that is, especially for our lives. I like to think of another example of occupation, right? You really want and have the desire to do this. You want to start a business. That's your dream. But for the life of you, you just don't have the money or the time. And this desire to do something that you feel you are unable to do is frustrating, and it causes this really vicious cycle, and it might go on and on and on. And we just don't realize that maybe God isn't letting you or giving you the chance to start it yet because it's not time. That's the delusion I like to have for me and myself and what I'm doing. But that is a very real possibility. Maybe it's just not time, and God knows the divine timing needed for what you want to come to fruition in the best way. That's another example. Now, I'm making bold statements here, but I truly think that you're allowed to get angry at God. He allows that. He's not like, I don't know. I know a lot of people who get angry at God and voice that anger and frustration, and he allows it. He's not striking you down for being mad at him. I like to think, and this is just for me personally, my thought process, that when we're angry at God, he kind of just like, I don't want to say chuckles, but he kind of just like, yeah, okay, sure, if you want to be. But I imagine he's thinking, you don't know what I know. You don't see the bigger picture here. The same way a little kid is mad, is upset and angry that their parent isn't letting them go outside in 20 degree weather to go play with their friends and go do something that's dangerous. The kid doesn't process all the things that might happen there. And that's like a very bad example, but there's a lot of examples you can think about with parents to children where the kids always get angry. They always get ticked off. Why can't I play video games? Why can't I eat McDonald's again and have another McFlurry? Well, because you don't realize that this choice, doing this, is going to lead to habits. It's going to lead to poor decisions. It's going to lead to poor health. The parent obviously knows that, the kid doesn't, and it's really hard for the parent to convey that so the kid understands it, and they just kind of have to ask the kid, like, just trust me. And that's what God does. He just wants us to trust him. It's hard, but we have to. At the end of the day, we have to build that trust towards God. I think being mad at God is completely misplaced. And I'd like to say, truly, imagine a life, how much sweeter and serene a life would be where you never, not only blamed God, but anyone. You took like unreal accountability. Who's the Navy SEAL, Jocko Willink, has a book and a theme that he preaches called Extreme Ownership. What if you just did this in a spiritual sense, though? What if for everything in your life, especially spiritual, especially emotional, with like, trying to love each other and trying to grow and trying to spread kindness, you took full ownership of that and stopped putting it on others, stopped putting it on God? How like unfazed would your life be? How nice would that be to just go through life and no matter what happens, you're just unshaken? I mean, your house could burn down today and you're detached and you're just, not that you don't care. That's not the point. It's not about not caring. It's about understanding more than your worldly cares. Understanding the eternal way more than the weight of the temporal, if that makes sense. And so I want to get into a couple examples here. One is personal, some are biblical, so just stay with me. But how often do we read in the scriptures of prophets, it's usually a prophet, who gets mad at God? The first story I like to go to is the book of Job. Job is the one we often quote, and we often think of Job and put him kind of in this like own pedestal, even though it's happened to other prophets. But Job loses everything. And we always like to go to the extremes in the scriptures. Chances are you haven't lost everything. If you have, I love you. I do. I don't know what that's like. I've not lost everything. But every now and then we read or hear about people who lose everything, again, either by their own choice or for reasons we don't know. Maybe something out of their control. They lost everything. Job loses family, wealth, health, and he ends up like cursing the day he was born. In King James Version, in Job chapter 16, verse 9, speaking about God, he says, "He teareth me in his wrath, who hateth me. He gnasheth upon me with his teeth. Mine enemy sharpeneth his eyes upon me. Well, just 3 chapters later, chapter 19, Job is immediately, and again, not immediately in like the chronology of his story, but he immediately says in verse 25 of 19, "For I know that my Redeemer liveth." After explaining everything that's happened to him and this anger that he had towards God, he has this like 180, this complete 180. Now, if there was ever anyone to be mad at God, you could argue it was Job. Dude lost everything. So valid, yes, but think of God's POV on Job's life and what he was going to go through and what he was going to restore to him. God knows Job's character. He knows his heart. He knows what he's capable of and his potential. And so from God's POV, which again, I'm not saying we need to have his POV because we can't. That's not possible for us right now. But he's asking us to trust him, to lean not on our own understanding. God's ways are much higher than man's ways for good reason. I'm glad that we're not steering the ship here. Even though we think we are, I'm not advocating that we don't have our will. I'm very against the notion that we don't have our will and our agency to make decisions. I think that is a heretical teaching by modern philosophers and modern snakes and vipers, if you will. All I'm saying is, if you could better understand your relationship to God, I think you would attribute less malice towards him. I really, truly do. And the reason you'd want to do that is so that you can go through life with more ability and capacity to love and share that love and to witness a brother or a sister going through trials, and rather than letting them stew in anger towards the holy God of Israel, you rid them from that and you help them to understand, hey, don't put that in the universe. Don't put that out there. It's okay for a season to deal with those emotions in a healthy way, but to let that stew, I mean, that's what really sours and hardens people. And I'd like you to think about somebody in your life who's just an angry person. I immediately think of a couple people. They're angry. They have a hardened shell around their heart. And with recent Christmas season, we think of the Grinch, whose heart was shrinking and was 3 sizes too small. And some people are just like that. And often it's misplaced anger. It's anger and grief with no place to go. And instead of filling it with love and using love as an antidote, they just let it fester over and over and over till they're blinded by that anger. And they can't see things from any other perspective or any other way. And I just think that is completely ungodlike to operate and live that way. We could go on. Jeremiah and Moses and the Psalms of David. I mean, so many of the Psalms. I have this beautiful painting of the Psalms up here. But so many of them are like lamenting and in anguish. And so many of them are in gratitude and praise. And naturally, we're going to ebb and flow between those emotions. That is okay. But to live in and continually put blame and anger on God, we're better than that. We are so much better than that. So, personal story to kind of wrap up today's episode. I am 26 years old. I'm a youngin'. I'm a young buck with the whole world ahead of me. And truly, life's great. I'm happier than I've ever been. Things are on the up. There's ups and downs as always. But truly, I feel very fortunate and blessed for everything I've been given and for the fortunate surroundings that I just have via family, via friends, work, you name it. All aspects of my life are seemingly good, and I'm grateful. However, if you would have told me about 7-8 years ago that as a 26-year-old, I would be single, I'd be divorced, and I'd be living where I'm living now, doing what I'm doing now, I would have been very angry and very upset. And I would have never believed that. My life has not gone the way that young Reed wanted it to. something that I've worked on and I've talked to friends about. But I have this thing where for a while, and I'm getting out of it now the last few months, but for a while I'd see pictures of myself as a little boy, and not to get all like sad and depressed here at the end, but I'd see little pictures of myself as, 4 years old, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, just bright as day. That you could see my eyes just glowing and happy. And my mother said I was a generally happy kid, and I feel like a generally happy person. But when I see those pictures, I get this like sense of like sadness, like a somber feeling of like, oh man, like little did Reed know. Like little did he know what was gonna happen to him and was gonna befall him. And I'm not saying that to make you sad, but there's a clear childlike love that existed back then that I think through what I've been through, like a little bit of that light is lost. And you hear those people joking about like, oh, the light has left me, and truly it does for people. Look back to yourself as a child and look at where you're at now, and can you look at that little boy or girl and reconcile to them what has happened in your life? And it's hard. There's a big gap there because it's like, man, like you almost feel protective over them, and you didn't want them to go through what they're going through. But the truth is, so much of your perspective and your emotions rely on your outlook. It really, truly does rely on your ability to rely on God's grace to open up your heart and heal it and change it for the better. I went through this experience. I went through a divorce, better than some, worse than others, right? It's not about that, but personally to me, it was extremely difficult. I had known this person for about, at the time, more than half of my life. Over a decade, I had known this person. And in no world am I supposed to know somebody that long, end up marrying them, and then end up never talking to them again, right? Never is that the plan, right? No one's plan is to get divorced. No one's plan is to lose somebody in a car crash. No one's plan is to get cancer. But these are inevitabilities of being here on earth. This is what I believe we would have signed up for. We would have said, despite all these challenges and trials, the alternative of not getting this experience and not trying to grow and become better, I don't want that. I don't want that risk. I want to talk about risk. This is all risky. The risk isn't in playing it safe. The risk is in playing it safe. That's where the real risk lies. So going through what I've been through in life to where I'm at now, I can't see myself, as much as I wanted to attribute what happened as God. God how? God why? Well, a key piece of that puzzle is that I made choices, that person made choices were made in my control and out of my control. And either way, God allowed it to happen. It happened, and God allowed it. So what do I do with that now? Do I blame him? Do I blame myself forever? Do I blame them forever? There's options. And I think the best option is love. I had my dad at the time offer a prayer for me, and in it, he said that. He said, you need to have a soft heart and be more loving than you've ever been. What are you talking about? Be more loving than I've ever been? Are you kidding me? That's what I need to do right now. And that prayer had power over me. And ever since, I'm not saying I've got it figured out. I clearly don't. But I haven't been angry at God or angry at anyone, like truly angry ever since. And I think that's a change God has allowed to happen to me. That's not something I did myself. That's something that I had to, in that dark and dreary place and depression that I was in. It was either I harden and become angry and vile and mean, or I soften and let God heal me and fix me, and I let my heart grow 3 sizes. Those are the choices. So my invitation to you is, next time you are angry at God, do not let it make you hardened and more vile and vicious. Let it soften you. Next time somebody does you wrong, turn your cheek as Jesus taught us to do. Is that hard? Yeah. And understand your relationship with God. If you don't know what that is or where you stand, my invitation is figure that out. Get closer to God, because if you're not as close to him as you once were, he is not the one who moved away. I can promise you that. And that concludes today's episode. Thanks for watching. See ya.